Yeah, please.
I would like to ask, I think there's a lot of assumptions made on what happened on the 7th of October. And I would like to read something that's a more balanced or more objective feedback on what really happened. What was the context and what happened on the 7th of October. Because in the American-Israeli narrative, it's all bad from Hamas and what happened, but there's so many other perspectives on what really happened, and we need to know closer to the truth what happened.
That's a really nice short question. Dank je wel. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. That's obviously that's actually part of the basics that should have been part of this talk. But they gave me only 15 minutes. And I had a lot to say, so sorry. Yeah, thanks for asking the question. So, when a population is occupied, and according to international law, Israel occupies, that's the correct term, Palestine, and because an occupation is meant in international law to be temporary, and it hasn't been temporary, it's an illegal occupation. But nevertheless, under occupation, that occupied people may not have an army, but the occupied force has an army, okay, which is a super army in the region. And also under international laws, the occupied party, so the Palestinians, it's legal to attack military targets, but not civil targets. Right, so what happened on the 7th of October, and one can talk about did Israel know about it or not. There's lots of people who say obviously Israel knew about it, but I don't want to go into that. I just want to, because I, like many others, sat shocked in front of my TV screen that morning. Hamas's, according to their own statements that I read, their plan was to capture people and to abduct them, to exchange them for the thousands of prisoners that Israel holds illegally. Okay. And this actually happened in 2011. Shilat, remember his first name, Shilat, is an Israeli soldier that was captured by Hamas, and Israel then, Hamas then freed Shilat, and Israel gave many Palestinians, because many Palestinians apparently is worth the life of one Israeli person. So that happened. So that was the plan, according to what they say. So about a third of the people who died on that day were military staff, right? A third of the Israelis who died were military staff. There were also people from other countries, and the 2/3 were civilians. That obviously, the civilian part is illegal, the military part goes. I'm not making a case for violence, not at all. I'm just saying what international law says. Of the other 2/3 who died, Israel killed a large number of them. I don't know exactly how many, because the Hannibal directive, they said, kill everybody. Okay, so members of Hamas were killed, but also Israeli civilians were killed. But everybody, not everybody, at the time most people focused on, this is so terrible, Hamas should never have done this. But there was no discussion at that point of time, at that point, not no, but very little, about decades of what Israel has done to the Palestinians. Tens of thousands of all the wars. And it's not only about how many people are being killed, it's about how much land has been captured, it's about how many people have been maimed, limbs blown away, the psychological harm. All of that are defined as violence in international law. Neglect, maltreatment, psychological harm, all of that is part of violence. So that systemic violence that Israel practices, all of that, I think, was part of the boiling pot. And I think others too, felt for a long time, it can't go on like this, it can't go on like that, something is going to explode. And that is how I understand the 7th of October. Israel then, when it happened, they had the right to protect themselves through policing. As an occupier, they are not allowed to use military might. They didn't use the police. They just went for the military and they bombed the hell out of Gaza. Yeah, so that's my take on it.
I should have a comment maybe further to that point. I think the 7th of October shocked all of us. But one of the ways that I processed it for myself is that what must have happened to have driven, be it the organization or individual, to go to that extent, even if it were that they killed 1,000 and some odd people, you know? It's the same question you ask yourself if, for example, you have a child that attempts suicide or does something at your house, causes more damage and all that. What drives that child? To what point, at what point must that child have been to have resorted to that? And then you immediately look at, okay, I need to see the bigger picture. I can't only focus on what happened on that day the child attempted suicide or burned down my house, you know? Let me look at the bigger picture. And that helped me to process the 7th of October.
Just on that note, you know, some of the very challenging discussions that I had with the people whom I interviewed, some of them spoke about their own role in violent uprising in our struggle, or more generally about it. And they say this one guy is a professor in education today at one of our universities, and he's as old, we're the same age. And he said to me, Marthie, you know, we understood at the time that we were sacrificing that clean moral space within ourselves, but we didn't see other options. I listened to a Jewish South African who was part of the workshops that was held after we became a democracy, where she sat with former freedom fighters who practiced violence and listened to them, and how she thought, yes, but because she was thinking of Israel. She was still a Zionist at that point of time, until the point when she realized, I can no longer say but. So through those discussions, and then reading up in depth about the life and contribution role of Dietrich Bonhoeffer during World War II, I started to develop an empathy and understanding that there are people who are willing to sacrifice their clean moral space because they just want the suffering to end for everybody. And although that's not my approach, violence, I really cringe when it comes to violence. I am not God, and I will not judge it. It's not up to me. And I developed an empathy for it. Yeah.
We now have to get to Marthie's closing remarks, but I wonder if you'll forgive me, Marthie. Perhaps you had something specific in mind, but perhaps instead of that, give us an example of what you experienced in Israel when you were there on behalf of the World Council of Churches, and what you observed in terms of the abuse of human rights. Perhaps a specific, concrete example of what it did to you.
Yeah, I feel I should give more time for questions because I said so much. But I was based with my team in Yanun, which is in the northern part of the West Bank. I talk a bit about it in the book. And at the time we, water sources, the settlers harassed the community, stole their animals, damaged their olive trees, harassed the children, urinated in their only water source, burned tractors, etc., and meter by meter by meter took more land. That was 2011. That international presence was there because a few years earlier the settlers came who live illegally in the West Bank. All settlers are illegal. And they held them at gunpoint and said, if you don't leave tomorrow morning, we'll kill you. So everybody left. Yanun. And then Jewish, Israeli activists heard about it, and they were outraged, and others were outraged, and then the World Council of Churches there and in other places in Israel started a full-time presence to protect the community. Okay, I was there for 3 months in 2011. Yanun is no longer part of Palestine. It's all gone. I got a report the other day from the Minard in the Netherlands. We met at that time, and he told me the whole story. If I could have worked on screens, I would have shown you pictures. It's all gone. It's all taken over. But more recently, at the end of 2024, I was part of a task team of the World Council of Churches. About 20 of us from different countries convened in Pendeli, just north of Greece. And at the time, and that came after the World Council of Churches was asked to acknowledge apartheid. But by the time in Israel, that Israel is an apartheid state, but by that time it was clear that it's more than apartheid, that it's genocide. So there we were, people from Indonesia and the United States, Scandinavian countries, South Africa, all over the world, Canada, etc., and Germany. So the two German colleagues who were there, they cannot see it. They won't see it, they don't want to see it. And they refuse to read the reports of Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and who, point by point, in legal terms, explain why Israel has an apartheid regime. They can't. But even so, this is part of what gives me hope. Last year, the Executive Committee of the World Council of Churches, and the World Council of Churches decision-making process is through consensus. So they don't release something if there's no consensus. So there's no consensus. Now, Germany, the EKD, is the church with probably the most money in the world and has major influence on the World Council of Churches. And yet, the Executive Committee said, sorry Germany, Israel is guilty of apartheid and genocide, and we should practice boycott, divestments and sanctions. Yeah. So it It gives hope, but it's too slow. It's part of the frustration that we live with, but we can't stop.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we could go on to this with a long time, but I would like to call on a prominent member of our Muslim society, Wahida Sheikh, to come forward and say a few words. Wahida.
Good day, everybody. I was tasked with summarizing everything that Marthie said, sorry. And I've got to say I can't do that, because wow, she steamrolled through everything, very eloquently I might say. Marthie started with something, even Johan as well, in that it was very emotional, because there was a poem by a Palestinian poet asking for continuity from us. And I think that is the greatest thing in answering Marthie's question about hope. Hope comes from the ordinary people like you and I. Hope comes from not turning a blind eye. It comes from asking those difficult questions, sitting with it, struggling with it, but not running from it. You know, you're going to have the gentleman in the back, I don't know if he's still there, asked about October 7th. It was a difficult thing to deal with. It's difficult to reconcile so many people being killed in whichever fashion. But the moment you walk away from that and say, not my problem, how do we deal with it? How do we give hope? How do we give understanding to something like that when you yourself don't want to confront and understand it? What we see in Palestine currently, and this is what gives me hope, is the Palestinian people themselves. Marthie rightfully said they want restitution and not retribution. And we see this because I saw a video just the other day of the Palestinians crushing rubble and making bricks. This is not a nation that is giving up. There's optimism, there's hope, and there's the will to get beyond that. There's not an instance where any one of the Palestinians, and I stand under correction, have said, we want to see them dead. They want to live, and they want to live in peace with all of whoever is around them. In South Africa, we look at it in most circles as a religious issue. It's not a religious issue because we are united by humanity. When it comes to the issue of our big Western countries, it's really sad because all it amounts to is talk, and more talk. When do we, as a world body, do something? The BDS movements, they work, yes. Even sanctionings work, we see that. But in a sense, we need to create more awareness and more pressure. And as civil society, I think we have a greater role to play. Not to say we need to go chanting, breaking things, burning things, but just put a little more pressure in the right way where we can get results. You know, accountability is not just for governments, it's for humans as well, it's for the ordinary citizens, because our tax money goes somewhere as well, right? It's all very well us saying we took Israel to the ICC, but we're supplying them with coal. So we need to apply pressure to the powers that be so we can actually effect change and bring about hope. I'd like to take this opportunity as well to say thank you, Marthie, for coming out and giving us this inspirational talk. I know it was a lot. We do appreciate it. Thank you, Johan, as well. And Marthie's book is available for everybody who's interested. I know there's a book signing after that, so I'm taking liberties, Marthie. I'm sorry. But I've got to promote you in that. So thank you for giving me your ear. I'm off to Johan as well. Thank you.
Yeah, every one of us who have raised our flags and our voices for the cause, we felt a lot of negative response, some from our friends even, or family members. And in light of that, we deeply appreciate what Marthie's done for us and for the Palestinian community and cause. And we'd like to present you with a small gesture of our gratefulness to remind you that under this beautiful mountain is a group of people who deeply appreciate you. Thank you. The cover. No, this is from a local artist.
The cover. The local artist, can you please stand up?
The artist is here.
How beautiful. I feel embarrassed because of the thanks, because we all do what we can.
Marthie, could you please just say something about the book you wrote, 21 Voices? What's it about?
So these interviews I actually did in 2015, and it's uncanny to see how about these. I did it with 21 people. So the plan was to do it with 10 South Africans who are part of the Palestinian struggle, who support the Palestinian struggle, and there are Jews, Christians, atheists, one Buddhist, a whole mix of Muslims, a whole mix of people, and 10 Jewish Israelis, but then one person turned out to have citizenship of both South Africa and Israel, so that's why it's 21 voices. But what they said then is still prophetic, and it's uncanny to see, what they said then. I asked them why are they involved in the Palestinian struggle, because I wanted to understand that also for myself. But they talk about much more. They talk about what it means to be a mensch, a human being. What does it take to love? They talk about violence and struggles. They talk about the hard, difficult things. The South Africans, most of them were part of the South African struggle, so they make those links. And the picture they paint, why they are involved in the struggle, goes from deep personal integrity and being the desire to go at peace, to sleep at peace at night, because they did what they could during a specific day, to the connection between global struggles, the money, the weapons, the industries, the politicians, all of those things they link. So in the first section of the book, I tell my own story about how I became involved and what happened and how I was detained by Israel and why I did the interviews. And then the bigger part of the book are these question in normal language interviews. And then in the end, last section is connecting the dots. There I pull the big trends together. And I complemented from voices from today, and then I updated this book after the 7th of October. I updated it in 2024. So the book was first published in 2023, just more or less October 2023, so it happened.